Welcome to hour number two of the Art Lewis Show. We'll call this hour number 2.5 because for the next total 1.5 hours, we're going to talk about a church that's celebrating 175 years. St. Michael's out in Richville is the place, and we have a number of folks with us this morning to talk about it. And we have them all in studio here. So they're sitting before my pulpit this morning. We have Jeff Bolzman. He is a school board member and a former elder of the church. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning.
Charles Work, one of the elders of the church. Charles, good morning.
Morning, Art.
Scott Wenzel, co-chair, 175th Anniversary Committee and a past elder chair. Good morning, Scott.
Morning, Art.
And Al Rodhammer, and he is a 175th anniversary. Are you the chairman?
I am, yeah. Yes, I
Did
am.
you volunteer for it, or did you get volunteered?
Sort of. Well, I've been chairman of a number of groups at our church over the years, and I guess I sort of got
Hooked.
booked for it. So,
Well, let's go back to the history. St. Michael's Lutheran Church, 175th anniversary. How did it start? How much of the history do we know?
well, we were the fourth Franconian colony. Frankenmuth was the first one in 1845.
Okay, let me stop right there for
Okay.
a minute, all right? How did we in Michigan, where you have to really want to get here, how did they pick, for example, Richville, to start the fourth Franconian colony of all of the land mass there is?
Okay.
How did they land here?
All right. Well, first of all, Michigan became a state in 1837, and Michigan was actively encouraging the German immigrants to populate, to Michigan. So the state established what they called a foreign immigration agency to promote and target industrial settlers to come to the Michigan area. And the leaders admired the strong religious beliefs of the German settlers.
Primarily Lutheranism at the time, right?
Lutheran immigrants, correct. So, after being the fourth colony, how did Richville, and back then it was actually Frankenhilf, the third colony was Frankenlust, and if you know where Frankenlust
sure.
is, okay, they had a pastor Sievers who was the pastor there, and he sold a large amount of land and had some money. And Pastor Kramer, who was the pastor at St. Lawrence in Frankenmuth, they got together and decided that they were going to purchase some more land for a fourth colony. So they purchased over 1,500 acres along what it was called the Sheboygan River there, and it's basically the Sheboygan Creek now, and that's right along where our St. Michael's Church is now, and they purchased that land. So then word got back to Germany that they had purchased this land, and then the German, what they called their immigration ministry council there, was looking to send over to Michigan, but they were looking for the poor German immigrants to come over. And the reason behind that is the unrest that was happening in Germany at that time was where a lot of the young people were not able to afford to live in Germany because they needed so much land or so much money to own land or a farm, and they couldn't get married.
Financial disparity. Yeah.
So then at that time, Pastor Lay, who was a main factor of people coming over to the Franconian settlements here in Michigan, arranged that a lot of these poor families could come over and settle in what was called Frankenhilf at that time. And Frankenhilf meant aid to the Bavarians.
So if we look at this fourth colony and it's getting all of these poorer people, did they come with skills?
That's a good question. A lot of them came with skills because what Pastor Lay was looking for was more than just farmers coming over that time, but he was looking at for people in paper mills and some kind of more industrialist type people, where some of the original settlers were more for the farmers. So that was the plan. Now the first settlers that came over to come to Frankenhill, because the journey to come here was quite the journey.
Yeah.
It took close to 3 months to get over here, and then from they landed in New York City. Then they had to go northward up the Hudson River to Albany, New York, and then from Albany, New York, to Buffalo, and they traveled by boat. Okay, and then a railroad traveled between the two same cities in 36 hours, but they couldn't afford it. So they took the boats instead. And then from Buffalo to New York, they traveled by a lake boat, okay? And they did that within 24 hours. So they ended up in Detroit, and those original settlers that were destined to go to Frankenhill at that time, a lot of them ended up staying in Detroit. And some of them that ended up in the Saginaw Bay area ended up in Saginaw. So there was only 2 families that came the first time to Frankenhill. And then within the next 2-3 years, there were more settlers that ended up coming.
Can you imagine being one of those 2 families coming to a barren area, settling? Where was your food coming from? Where was your housing? Where was anything?
Well,
That's
you
just,
know,
you think back. Yeah, go ahead.
They had venison, and cornbread, mushrooms for food, and then sugar and vinegar come from their maple syrup at that time. And then the women usually had to travel by feet or by foot, and they went to Frankenmuth to pick up flour. And then they had to walk back through the forest.
Just out of curiosity, from the 4 of you sitting here, any of you have direct descendants back to the beginning?
No.
No?
well, I have a direct descendant that didn't come to Frankenhill, but actually went to Frankenmuth. Okay? And that would have been my great-great-grandfather, settled just a mile and a half down from the St. Lawrence Church in Frankenmuth. But he had a son who ended up buying a farm just a mile and a half out of Richville, and that's where my heritage comes from.
So how long from the time the first German settlers end up in this fourth colony till the church is built?
The original log church was built in 1853, okay, and it was a 25-foot by 36-foot church, okay, and the first settler, his name was Carl Amann, and he donated 4 acres of land for that, which is now where our cemetery is located, and we actually have a monument over the cemetery where that original log church was. And the congregational members had to donate 17 hours to build this church. So when we had a pastor, Deindorfer was his name, and he was the pastor there, but he left in 1853. He ended up resigning. So it was 8 years before St. Michael's ended up having their own full-time pastor again. It was Pastor Bernthal, who only happened to be there for 50 years. But so a lot of the pastors from Frankentrills, Frankenmuth, Frankenlust filled in that position for those 8 years.
Yeah.
How did the name St. Michael's come about? Do we know?
It came St. Michael's because the dedication was on St. Michael's All Saints Day.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
So there was a connection.
there was, yes.
Yeah. Saints Day.
All right.
There was 20 families that ended up in 1853. That's what started the church. They needed some place.
175 years they're celebrating. We'll tell you about all the celebrations and things going on with our guests after we take a break, and we'll be back with more after these notes.
Beautiful new Florida.
This is a test of the emergency.
Hi, we're back with you here on the Art Lewis Show. We have a number of folks in studio from St. Michael's in Richville, I should say. Jeff Bolzman, school board member and former elder. Charles Work, an elder of the church. Scott Wenzel, co-chair of the 175th Anniversary Committee and past elder chair. And Al Rodhammer, who is the 175th Anniversary Committee chairman. Celebrating 175 years. There's going to be a Founders Day on August 16th. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to continue on with the history of the settlements, because you have to have that foundational history to realize all the things that have happened since. So today it's Richville. When that fourth colony, that Franconian colony, was formed, it wasn't Richville. Why and how did it get to be Richville?
Well, it was Frankenhilf, and as I mentioned earlier, the definition of that was aid for the Bavarians,
Right.
because of the poor immigrants that were coming over. But in 1862, the Postal Service was getting very frustrated and tired with all the Franken colonies around, Frankentrost, Frankenmuth, Frankenlust, and there was a lot of confusion. So the Postal Services called it Richville, and the reason they called it Richville is because of the fertile ground that was farming ground that was in that area, which always I always wondered that or questioned that, because you thought there'd been a lot of trees and stuff around at that time. How did they know that that was fertile ground? But I think that was determined when they purchased that land originally, that this was fertile farm ground. So they referred to it as Richville, and in 1862, I'm not sure how the official document came about that they changed the name from Frankenhilf to Richville.
Just like that.
Just like that, yeah.
Our sign at the city limits has Richville, underneath says Frankenhilf. And then
No, it does it really? Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't noticed that.
on
I'll
the
have to
city
look.
limits.
Yeah, as they cleared the land, they noticed, like Al said, the land is fertile, and that's what really drew the people.
So how big an area are we talking about when we say Richville? We have all these communities around here, and if you asked anybody the geography, they probably couldn't tell you where the lines are. So how big is Richville?
About 400 people.
I think there's only about 400 people in the small community, but the community is based, still is to this day based around the church and the school.
That is the center of everything.
right,
Isn't it?
right.
It really is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've heard from years. I mean, Terry Henney, he lives there, and for years and years, I've heard about St. Michael's, talked about St. Michael's, because it is the focus of the community, isn't it? Really, when
And we share 46 and 15 together, and of course, Star of the West has been a presence there. They have been in almost all the colonies too, so the agricultural base is still there too.
Yeah.
So, how big is the church in terms of membership?
1,200, I think.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, about 1,200.
Yeah.
So you draw from far more than just
Oh, yeah.
obviously just Richville.
Yeah, and Jeff, isn't the school around 160?
6.
It's grown a little bit this year, so
Okay.
yep.
In early childhood, there's probably
That's
a couple, not quite 200,
it's 212. I heard last.
212.
And over the years, I mean, there's got to be a list of pastors over the 175 years.
We've been blessed to have a lot of staying power. It stayed a long time. And then when we talk about Founders Day, we'll talk about 4 of them there that stayed a long time, like 40 years or more. Our
Hi.
third pastor, Pastor Gillespie, was here the last time. Has got 31 years with us already.
Yeah. Well, Pastor Bernthal became the full-time pastor in 1862, and he stayed for 50
Was he the
years.
first full-time pastor?
First full-time after the original pastor Dierendorf was there for a couple of years to really develop the church, and then he became the pastor. And it's always illustrated in publications that in 50 years he never missed a service. That's hard to imagine. So we tease Pastor Gillespie when he wants a Sunday off.
What are you doing here? There's a record here.
But then we had, after that, we had Pastor William Beckemeyer. He was from 1912 to 1937. And then Pastor William Schanel was from 1937 to 1980. But in 1965, we got a second pastor, and that was Pastor Victor Speakerman, and he was there from 65 to 1988. And then we've had a number of pastors since then.
Hakes has been there a while.
Pastor Hakes, yeah.
And
Pastor
how
Vatican.
how old is the current building?
1971.
1971, yes.
And what kind of shape's it in? Just out
Awesome.
of curiosity. Is it
It
really?
was built by Brunner and Sons contractor in Frankenmuth, and it's an amazing building. It was ahead of its time then. It's still, I think, ahead of its time.
You know, we just had who was a son of the congregation, Pastor Bruce Keshnick, who was born and raised here at St. Michael's, and he was a pastor from New Albany, Indiana, and he came up to be a guest pastor for our celebration here just last month. And he talked about that in 1969, 1970, when the plans for this church was to be built, that the church at that time was $1.1 million. And oh my God, here the older people were saying, that is a lot of money to build for a church. I don't know, that's just too much money. Well, as God provides, here we are, and the church has been the center of our congregation for all
Bet
those
you
years.
couldn't build it for 1.1 today.
No.
Yeah, and that was paid for, and
Yeah.
Paid more than about 5 years, I
yeah,
believe
it was
it
paid
was.
for.
That's amazing.
Was it Bob Kishnick that said, "You guys are verrückt"?
Yeah, he said in German that we're
Du bist
crazy.
verrückt.
So,
Was because Germans coming over were, as we mentioned, mostly Lutheran. Was it all Missouri Synod, or were there synods back then?
there were synods back then, and that was part of the controversy.
That's
I don't know the exact year that became Missouri Synod, but it was like 1840.
A6, I think, or 7. I think Schultz was one of the first year.
Yeah, because there was
1846.
the Iowa Synod. There were there was different names. It's
Still
written
is
in-
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin
Wisconsin,
Synod actually
Missouri.
was developed later. So there was part of when Pastor Deindorf, or the first pastor, left. It was over Synod conflicts that he ended up leaving St. Michael's to move to Iowa because there was a little difference in philosophy.
Well, in the
and,
way there is today between Wisconsin
correct,
and Missouri
correct.
and the LC,
yeah.
they're-
Believe Saginaw, the first really church in Saginaw, to my knowledge, was actually St. Paul Lutheran Church, which is now a Wisconsin Synod,
right.
and Holy Cross, which is a Missouri Synod, were really the two first Lutheran churches in Saginaw.
And I mean, this area has been ripe with Lutheranism for all these years, which is why we have a Valley Lutheran, and we have the other
MLS.
MLS, Michigan Lutheran Seminary. But that's Wisconsin, and Valley Lutheran is Missouri, right?
Correct.
It's amazing. I mean, it fascinates me how theoretically you all believe the same thing. But yes, there's differences in organizational structure between the various synods. And it's true in other religions too. I mean, and I'm Jewish, and there's Orthodox and Conservative and Reform. I find it interesting.
I mean, actually, the Franken colonies, they were kind of like Frankenmuth, and the rest of them were kind of charter members of Missouri Synod at that time.
Yeah, St. Lawrence was the
Started-
charter member, and then
Right.
Schultz
Started it.
came in
Yeah.
second. Then we came 3 years behind.
Which, if you structured it, the Wisconsin would be the Orthodox, and Missouri would be the conservative middle, and then the American Lutheran would be probably the Reform version.
Well, another reason why some of these Germans came to America was because the church in Germany was drifting. And yes.
Really?
Yes. And it was a big concern. And the pastors there were saying, if we continue here and our children continue here, we're going to drift along with them. We need to reestablish what God's Word says, law and gospel, proclaim the truth. We need to find a place where we can go, where we can teach and preach and confess the truth. So that's how St. Louis, there's a whole nother colony that went down to St. Louis, and that's one of the reasons. And there were many reasons. There were financial reasons, there were economic reasons, there were running out of space reasons. There was potato famine reasons. There are a lot of reasons why things happen, but one of them was the drift. And the Missouri Synod, which was Missouri and other states, the LCMS just got taken down to a few words because the others are way too long, that the pastors felt that they were drifting away from what God's Word says, and we need to reestablish this and plant a place where we can teach, preach, and confess what we believe the way we believe it and have the freedom to do that.
I have to believe, despite Michigan's outreach and all of that, that when the church and the members of the church in Germany, seeing the drift and looking for a new place, had to consider America because of our religious freedom and how we were founded, breaking away from
Exactly.
one church.
Which made this very much, well, if we want to go somewhere, where are we going to go? And there are already some colonies there. Let's go join them, and we will establish our church and plant it there. There was also a missionary component with the Native American Indians, not necessarily Richville so much at that time. That was more of a Frankenmuth thing. But again, there were many reasons. A tragedy happens or something happens. There are many reasons. You can't just break it down to one or two. That's too simplified. So people came here willingly looking for a new place to establish what they believed to be true.
So initially, if I heard you right, Al, there were two families that came as the original settlers. Is that right?
Two families that ended up settling in Frankenhof or Richville at that time. There were more that came over, but they ended up settling in either Detroit or in the Saginaw area. And then following the next couple years, within the next 3 years, there were more and more families that ended up
my next
coming.
question is how long did it take to
Yes.
really populate the town?
In our Founders Day, we have a lot of the original settlers.
Okay, hold on to that thought.
Okay.
I want to come back. We'll talk about Founders Day when we return. We've got to take a break here, and we will be back. St. Michael's celebrating 175 years.
Thinking Kia? Think Dayland Kia.
Hi, we're back with you on the Art Lewis Show. We are celebrating the 175th anniversary of St. Michael's in Richville. And as part of that celebration, they're going to have a Founders Day. We have a number of folks with us to talk about it. Al Rodhammer, Scott Wenzel, Charles Work, Jeff Bolzman, all with us, all members, and have had various elder and committee chair responsibilities. So let's talk about Founders Day, August 16th. What's it all about? What's going to happen?
Start it off and I'll finish it.
Well, as part of our 175 anniversary, we thought it was proper to recognize the original settlers that came to Frankenhill who started St. Michael's.
And how long did it take? Because I'm looking at this list. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, roughly 20?
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take all of those people to arrive? They didn't all come at once.
They all started in 1850 is where the first settlers, Carl Amann and Michael Schwartz, came. Those were the two settlers that came that first time that we had mentioned earlier. And shortly beyond then was in 1851. Again, another group of settlers. We have 4 names here that came at that time. And then in 1852 and 1853 is when the majority of those early settlers ended up coming.
So as I look at this list, something is obvious. The only names on this list are the heads of household, the men. How many other people were with them? Because, yeah, they were the original settlers, but they had families. It was a husband, a wife, children. What were the counts, in terms of people?
Boy, I imagine families at that time.
Yeah, that's a good question, Art, and I'm not sure that we have a good answer for that. How many were, obviously you're correct. And if we look at some of these settlers' gravestones that are in our cemetery, it shows wives and children that are buried, with
Yeah, I have to assume they
Yeah.
came with their families.
So I assume they came with their families. That's a good question. And I think the question that I would have is because we talked about the poor Germans to leave Germany to come here, and a lot of these families that I do know, because they were not allowed to be married in Germany because they didn't have enough land, when they hit Ellis Island or New York City, they got married in New York.
No
Okay.
kidding.
And then a lot of them ended up in Detroit. They got married in Detroit because they were able to finally get married. So a lot of them came with really young families at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I wish we could have a little more definite answer on that, but from my understanding is, and looking at their gravestones and the years that they were born, these were younger people, younger families, younger men that were coming with their families to Michigan and Saginaw Valley and eventually Frankenhill.
So Founders Day is about what?
Well, it's about recognizing those early settlers. We have, out of this list here, I believe 15 of those are buried in our cemetery. Okay, so we're recognizing those sites, and then some of these names, there's still some family descendants that are still belong to our church, and we're trying to encourage those family members to come to recognize their past family grave site location, and we're also going to recognize our past 4 pastors that are buried in our cemetery, which is Pastor Bernthal, Pastor Beckermeyer, Pastor Schenel, and Pastor Speakerman. Okay, and we're also recognizing that original log church that we had mentioned earlier, which is in our cemetery. So it's basically a recognition of
the
our
official log church. The building itself isn't there, is it?
no,
No.
It's a plaque?
It's a we have
Monument?
it's
Yeah.
a stone monument.
Okay.
that
It
we
was
have
built
there.
in 1853. There's a flag straight there, and there's a stone there. So we got a flag. We're going to recognize that area too.
We feel it's important that our congregational membership understands the history of St. Michael's, and not only the history, but the hardship that it took for them to settle here. And we just felt that that is something that's worth observing, worth celebrating, and worth taking a look at. So
So what happens on Founders Day? It's between 9 and 10 in the morning at the church,
It'll be actually be in the cemetery.
in the cemetery.
So we have our early service at 7:45, and we have our late service at 10:30. Between 9 and 10, we're carving that out. Wayne Hecht, who was here last time, will be our narrator. He'll have about a 10-15 minute address. And then our committee members will be spread out among the headstones of these families and pastors. And we'll have little short histories we can read to them and show them the sites, walk around, and learn about the history through the cemetery.
So I'm curious about something. Who recorded all this history? They keep journals?
there was a lot of documents. There was a 50th St. Michael's anniversary booklet, which was written in German, that we took a lot of the information from. There was a 75th book, a 100th book. It seems like every 25 years there was some kind of book that was
Updated.
And now, are they? We did have some information on some of these settlers on the years, where at one it said 1852, and another illustration we had where it would say 1853. So I guess those people aren't here to ask what year they actually came, but we're pretty well in that. So the history has been documented as best as possible, and I think it's really important that that kind of history can continue. And that's obviously the generation we live in now. History isn't maybe not quite as important as it used to be, but we're trying to, hopefully we'll have some younger people in our congregation. I think we stated to them, even if you don't like history, this
You can
would be
learn
some
from it.
you can learn
Yes.
from it. Correct.
All right, we'll take a quick break, come back with our guests. More ahead.
What if your child's
Hi, we're back here on WSGW. We are chatting with Jeff Bolzman, school board member and former elder of St. Michael's. Charles Work is an elder. Scott Wenzel, co-chair, 175th Anniversary Committee, past elder chair. Al Rodhammer, who is the 175th Anniversary Committee Chair. I'm looking at this Founders Day list, and lo and behold, I see Johann Leonard Trump. And no relation, I assume.
Not that we're aware of.
Not
That
that you're
we're aware of. There are still some Trumps in the area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they're really? Really?
Yes.
No kidding.
Yep.
Yep.
That's something we never
Some of
thought
the
of.
names where they're still in the area is Gruber on this list. Michael Gruber still has descendants at St. Michael's.
Huber?
J. Michael Huber. There's some descendants. We're thinking that's more towards Frankenmuth and Frankentrost now. Johann George Bauer is
Bauer,
one.
yep.
He still has family members. Actually, a great grandson would probably be, and
Two grades
Brian Bauer.
involved, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heinlein?
Heinlein
Yes,
is a definite name that is still. In fact, we have she's, I believe, 94 years old. Her name is Doris Bauer. This was her great uncle's father. Okay, and I just spoke to her a couple weeks ago. She was giving me some document, and this would be interesting sidelight of that. Doris is proficient in translating German into English. And she told us that in 1949 was the last year that our voters' meetings were still written in German, and in 1949 they converted it to English. So they had a situation where they had where in the 1940s, a family was given approval for burial in our cemetery, but they couldn't go back to the church minutes because it was written in German, and they got Doris to read these church minutes to translate, and they finally figured it out. But that was amazing to me that it was still written in German after 1949. It was still, the church minutes were still being written in German.
Not long back. You know.
Let me ask Jeff, how long before a school came along? Because that was another thing. Obviously, they get here with youngsters, and there's no schools.
The schools were really, really important in the Lutheran Church because the faith is carried on through the schools. And the schools were really built on, I have a little book here called Luther's Small Catechism, where what Martin Luther did was he took the faith of the Bible and put it into a catechism, and in question and answer format, this would be taught to the children, and they would be taught to the children from very little on through rote memory and passing back and forth, which is one of the main reasons for this school, was to preserve the faith. Before I said, remember how this church was drifting. So one of the things that these early church fathers wanted to do was to teach the faith to the children, that they know who God is, who we are, what sin is, what grace is, how can you come to God by yourself. It's like you need a mediator. You need someone who will take that sin away. So this was all taught through the schools. So the schools were very, very high priority because the school was a way to preserve the faith. Does that make sense, what they did?
Does do you know when the school was started?
1882.
I was
first
waiting for
one
these
built.
guys to grab that.
There was already things in the church, but 1882 was the first school. And cutting to the chase, 1951 was our new school was built, and that's currently what we use.
Yeah, previous to 1951, there was what they called country schools. There was 4 country schools.
Each one of those colonies?
No, that was just for Richville.
Districts.
Oh,
North,
district.
south, east,
Yeah.
west around the church.
Yeah, they were the
Okay.
country
Those were the
schools,
districts.
and they came together their 8th grade year for what was confirmation. Okay, but then 1951, the present school, that's been added on to a number of
So
times
this was
since.
just in Richville, just in
Just
your
in Richville,
colony
yes.
yourself.
Yeah.
Denmark Township, basically.
And the school developed over the years,
Yes.
expanded over the years.
Yes, and they are called teachers. So the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod trains teachers, and they then are sent out, like pastors are sent out. The teachers. I was a Lutheran school teacher for 17 years myself, and you're sent out. You're trained and sent out to help to teach the children and teach the faith. and also all these other subjects also. But the whole
is
idea
is teaching akin to what, for example, a pastor might accept a call.
right.
Teacher, same thing?
Yes, I accepted a call. My first call was to New York, and the second one was to Detroit, and the third one was to Millington, Michigan. So that's how I came to this area, which is why I don't know the history like these fellas do. I've been in too many places, and they all have their histories.
All right, guys, hang on. They're going to hang around with me right through Focus. So we will have more with our guests on the 150th, 175th celebration of St. Michael's in Richville. Founders Day, August 16th from 9 to 10 a.m.
Jeff Gronsky here with Auto Bright.